Hi everyone. Today we're going to be looking at M0's Provider Registry. This is allowing you to bring in your custom or your forked Provider Registry into M0 for ease of consumption. Let's start by looking at the documentation. You can see at the documentation we have a table of contents on the right hand side, identifying the key elements you're going to need to complete to bring that provider into M0. Let's get started. So if we navigate down, we can see the first step is actually creating the provider within M0. So you can do this by navigating to the registry, providers, and creating a new provider button. So within M0, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the registry section. We're going to go to the provider section. And what we're going to do is we're going to create that new provider. I'll be forking off the M0 Terraform provider today. So I'm going to name that aptly. So the type should be relevant and the description M0 Terraform fork. And I'm going to save that. So that's the first step done. We navigate back to the documentation. The next step should be generating a GPG key. So we have a link to the GitHub documentation here. If you navigate to that documentation, you can see there are a number of prerequisites, a number of things you need to install. But essentially, we're going to run this short command. When you run this short command, you have to go through a number of prompts, and those prompts will generate a ID and a key for you. So make sure you have this information at hand, as you'll be needing it later on during the video. You can see here the example, the GPG generate full key is going to start you off the prompts, and once you work through those prompts, you'll get your output as defined in the documentation. Now, working back through the documentation, what we'll need to do is with that key and that ID, we're going to need to load that into two places. We're going to need to load that within GitHub, and we're going to need to load that within M0. So let's start by loading it into M0. You can see here, organizational settings, keys, and GPG keys is where it needs to be. So let's do that. Settings, keys, and GPG keys. You can see I've already predefined one here, but it's as simple as adding a GPG key, giving it a relevant name, adding the key and adding the ID, which can be found both key here and the ID here. So by saving that, your key will be saved here. Great. So now what we need to do is we also need to load that into GitHub. So if we navigate to GitHub and we go to our settings, obviously this may change depending on the VCS you're using. And we would go to SSH and GPG keys, and we would add a new GPG key. I have already added the key here, but it's as easy as clicking add new key, giving it a title and dropping in the key there and clicking add, and that will save that into your config. Now, if we go back to the documentation, we're kind of done with M0 and GitHub. What we need to do now is we need to work with our provider. So there are a number of ways you can do this manually, but what we're going to do is we're going to run through a couple of steps on the CLI, and then we're going to use this script that the M0 R&D folks have created for us to upload this for ease. So let's start by going to our provider that we're going to use. So I'm going to be forking off the M0 Terraform provider. So if I click the source code from the M0 Terraform provider, I navigate here. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to fork off this. So you can see I've already created a fork, and this fork can be seen here. You can see the latest release I have for this provider is 1.09. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating 1.010, and we're going to be pushing that towards M0. So let's go back to M0 and check. If we go to our registry, and we go to providers, and we go to M0, you can see no versions can be seen as of yet. That's fine. So let's go and run a few CLI elements. So what I've done is I've done a git clone, and I've cloned my repository, the forked repository. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create the tag, and I'm going to create a tag of 1010. And you can see here that the tags 1010 should now be seen. Oh, sorry, not seen yet. We need to push said tag to the provider. Once we have that in the repo, you can see 1010. However, my release is still 109. That what we're going to do is we're going to create a release. So this would typically be done with a GitHub token that you should already have and the GPG fingerprint that you generated before. And then the command would be go releaser clean. And I'm going to run this from a script so I can use my existing keys. And then once I use this, you can see it's generating a release for 1010. I have a passphrase associated to my account. So I'm going to enter the passphrase, and you can see here that it's creating a version of 1.10. So that's complete. Now, if we go back to GitHub and I refresh that, you can see 1010 is there. So this is my latest release. This could be your first release. It's my 10th. So now all the releases are available within GitHub. Now what we need to do is we need to use the upload script that you can find in the documentation here to send that towards M0. Again, within M0, we refresh this, we haven't seen anything yet. Still nothing. So we're going to copy that script, which should look something like this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the M0 API key, the API secret, the provider ID, and the GPG key. Some of the elements that I don't want to share are above this, so you can't see them, but essentially what we do want to show you is the provider ID being defined. So the provider ID can be seen in two ways. Within the registry and the providers, you can copy it from here, or if you click M0, it can also be seen in the URL. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the new project ID and save that. And then I'm going to run the script, which we've defined here with these new variables. And I've called it upload provider version. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to navigate to the Git folder and the Terraform provider dist. So essentially we're looking in this directory here for that information, for those Terraform provider versions, and we're going to push that towards M0. So this should be a short, quick script. And then once that's uploaded, we can navigate back to M0 and we can see the version. So let's go back to M0. We can press enter and we can see our new version of code is there. To use this new version, the new provider, we can use these set of instructions here. Yeah, and there's some authentication information there. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do have any questions, please reach out to us using our application chat or our support channels, and we'd be happy to help you through any issues you're having.